Right. Good morning, everybody. I'm Detective Inspector Ross Brown, and I'm Head of Cyber and Innovation for the Southwest Cyber Resilience Centre. I'd really like to welcome you all to the first in a series of 4 webinars that we're putting on between the Southwest Cyber Resilience Centre and in collaboration with the National Cyber Security Centre. This series of webinars over the next 5 weeks will all be at the same time and on the following dates: the 8th, next Thursday, the 15th, and then skipping a week, and then on the 29th of April. They've been designed to take you through in a structured and hopefully easy to understand way to explain to you how to use the NCSC products that we provide you as part of the membership of the Southwest Cyber Resilience Centre. This will hopefully not only help you to understand the NCSC tools, but more importantly, it will help you to implement the guidance and help you make your business, whatever size or sector, more cyber resilient. This has never been more relevant as 2 in every 5 businesses suffered from some form of cyber attack last year, and where they suffered a loss, that was on average around about £8,000. Morning's webinar is entitled Introduction to Cyber Security. And in the next 25 or 30 minutes, we aim to cover the following subjects: introduction to the NCSC, outline of key cyber threats, cyber aware campaign, including the steps and toolkit, and there will be an opportunity for questions, hopefully at the end of the presentation. And what I would ask you to do is perhaps type your questions into the chat forum of the Zoom call, and I'll pick those up as we go through, and I'll ask our guest speaker, Christopher, from the NCSC to go through them at the end of the presentation. So a quick word about Christopher. In terms of the presentation this morning, it will be audio only as a result of security considerations surrounding his being part of the NCSC. But Christopher has kindly joined us and will take us through this morning's webinar. Chris, I think that's probably all I need to say at the moment. So if I can hand over to you, thanks very much.
Excellent, Ross. Thank you so much. And good morning to everybody who's joined us on the call this morning. I'll just bring my slides up now. As Ross mentioned, my name is Chris. I'm the SME Engagement Officer at the National Cyber Security Centre. So my job is to work with our regional partners, the Cyber Resilience Centres, to reach businesses and help them implement cybersecurity controls to keep their business safe online. As Ross mentioned, there'll be 4 webinars in the next 4 weeks. These will have a natural progression to them. Today is going to be very much high level, looking at some of this cybersecurity concerns we're facing, the impacts of a cyber incident, and looking at the recently launched cyber aware campaign, which helps businesses to implement basic cybersecurity controls to keep their staff safe online. We'll then move into implementing these steps, looking at some of the tools available from the NCSC and what are the impacts a cyber incident can have on your business. So a little bit about the NCSC. We were established at the end of 2016 to help make the UK the safest place to live and work online. There was a recognition that the UK needed a national technical authority who could coordinate all cybersecurity matters across all parts of the UK in aid of our aim to make sure that our cyberspace is as secure and safe as possible. So we work with all parts of the UK, all from the individuals and families, businesses of all sizes, the public sector, and cybersecurity professionals. So we have quite a big remit there to support the UK at all levels, because cybersecurity is no longer simply an IT issue for IT experts. We now live in a more digital and interconnected society, and we need to take stock of the growing threat we face from a growing technological era. So when we think about cybersecurity, then it makes it makes sense that we no longer consider this as just a IT issue, as one of technology. We need to consider this from a standpoint of both people, processes, and technology. It's about having the correct technology in place, making sure that we have a level of cyber awareness, whether professionally or individually in our personal lives, and making sure that our businesses have the correct processes in place. So what are our processes for backing up our data, implementing the latest antivirus, and do we have a process for responding and recovering from a cyber incident? And all of this together creates that sense of cyber resilience, that ability to cope with unforeseen incidents, both malicious and accidentals, because cyber incidents do occur. They do impact all organizations at all levels. So we need to be able to respond and recover should a cyber incident occur. When we look at the threat actors, then what is the threat to the UK cyberspace? We can often think of these in 5 real categories: from our cyber criminals, the nation states, insiders, hacktivists, and terrorists, all of which will have their own reasons and their own methods for carrying out a cyber attack on businesses, on UK society. And we need to recognize that given enough time, giving enough resource, any system can be broken. So our collective jobs, both at the NCSC and UK society and organizations, is to make sure that we make our cybersecurity landscape difficult for threat actors to attack and gain access. And just by implementing the basic level of cybersecurity controls, we massively reduce the likelihood of these threat actors carrying out successful cyber attacks in the UK. And when we think about cyber attacks, these are the 4 the more common cyber attacks we're seeing. Phishing attacks, which we're all familiar with, where they come from either emails, text messages, or fraudulent phone calls. Ransomware, in the way we saw where malware will encrypt an organization or an individual's computer, requiring a ransom to be paid for those files to be decrypted. And then we have a worm type malware which will self-replicate across the networks, similar to what we saw with WannaCry. When WannaCry hit the NHS back in 2017, I believe, the system was able to replicate itself across vulnerabilities and spread throughout not only the UK but the global economy as well. And then we have something known as Trojans, which purport to be genuine software, look very genuine on the surface of it, but have a malicious code or malicious software built into those genuine looking programs. So we need to be aware that our cyber attacks can take all shapes and forms, and that we need to be able to understand what the impacts of these are, the differences, and we'll talk more about these in later webinars. And our very cyberspace has changed dramatically as well over the last 12 months with a huge move to remote working and home working, which has meant that businesses have now had to take stock of new ways of working. We no longer have that distinction between home and work life. We now have, we've now brought our work into our personal lives. And what we've seen reported is that only 23% of businesses actually cover home working in a cybersecurity policy. So businesses really need to take account of how remote working is impacting on their organizational security, and what measures and procedures need to be put in place to help individuals still remain secure online whilst working at home. And we'll touch on some of those actions individuals can take. The Cybersecurity Breaches Survey was recently published this week. This is an annual survey which looks at the cyber landscape from the past 12 months, interviewing a number of businesses and charities. This year was particularly important given the change in the landscape. 4 in 10 businesses reported to have any kind of cybersecurity breach or attack in the last 12 months. And when we look at the reason for those breaches, overwhelmingly, phishing attacks are the main reason for a cybersecurity breach to any organization, followed shortly by other impersonations from fraudulent emails, and with only 9% of businesses being impacted by virus, spyware, or malware. So this really demonstrates the significance of phishing attacks on UK businesses. So I just want to spend the next few minutes outlining why phishing attacks are a huge problem for UK businesses. So when we look at the phishing types we have, the more common phishing attack we see time and time again is by email. We've all received emails purporting to be from HMRC, PayPal, Amazon, either offering some sort of reward, a tax rebate, or a fraudulent invoice, which looks as if money is required or payment needs to be taken. And what phishing attacks often do is really play on that sense of urgency or reward, which puts us in high pressure situations where we're not particularly going to think through the consequences of our actions, and we just want to, and we act quickly. And this is what scammers get their victims to do, is to act in a way where they wouldn't act normally. And we've all seen the telltale signs of a phishing email. It's the poor spelling and grammar, the generic greeting, a real sense of urgency. And what we're seeing more and more now within businesses are emails which look to be from high-ranking people within the organisation, requesting a payment is made to a particular bank account. So where this comes from, the CEO, the CFO, we tend to trust people of authority. We don't tend to second guess those sorts of emails. And this sort of attack has had huge impacts on UK businesses. You'd be surprised how many exec members fall foul of these genuine looking emails. And again, we see that offer of money or exclusive benefits, getting their victims to follow through on clicking through those emails. So phishing emails then, it's important that individuals and staff members are able to identify fraudulent emails, suspicious looking emails, and know the process for reporting those emails. Because the cybersecurity breaches survey identified that the average cost of a cyber breach which resulted in a loss of data or assets was over £8,000, which is a huge increase on last year. And obviously that increases with business size, with large enterprises costing the regions of £15,000 to £20,000, and this sort of money is huge to organisations. We've seen smaller micro businesses go under purely because they aren't able to recuperate the cost from a cyber breach. But the financial impact of a cyber breach, then we need to understand what really that money involves. A recent survey by Ipsos Mori broke down the financial impacts into 4 categories. We have the short term and the direct cost, which we're familiar with. It's the cyber and ransom, it's the financial theft, that staff response time required for resolving the issue. So whether that's contracting external staff or overtime, there's a huge cost there. But what we also need to take account of is the long-term and indirect costs that come from a cyber breach. the reputational damage, the supply chain attrition, the loss of new and existing customers. These are the wider impacts which businesses need to take account of when they are planning their business continuity plan. What we find is that with the reputational damage, this is very hard to put a monetary value on. And the impact this can have for a business, many businesses will take, it takes weeks, months, years to recover from the long-term indirect costs of a cyber attack. And in fact, many businesses never really do fully recover from the long-term and indirect costs of a cyber breach. So it's really important that we have the correct processes, technology, and training in place so staff can respond, can identify suspicious activity and report it before this unfolds into a sustained cyber incident. Often at times our staff are the front line of defense, so it's important that they are following correct procedures, embedding correct behaviors to ensure that our organizations are secure at all levels. So now I just want to touch on the Cyber Aware campaign. Then the campaign was relaunched at the end of last year, and this sets out 6 behaviours that all businesses should be taking, but also that these are controls that we can all be embedding in our professional and personal lives. That there's a recognition now that we all need to take that collective responsibility and embed good cyber practices and behaviors in our day-to-day lives. So I just want to spend the next 5 to 10 minutes outlining some of those controls. So the Cyber Aware campaign is made up of 6 behaviors. 4 of those are based on securing accounts and having strong passwords. The 2 there are about updating devices and turning on backup. Now, the great thing about this Cyber Aware campaign is that this doesn't necessarily apply just to businesses. As I said, these are steps that we should all be taking in our personal lives. So if there's anything you take away from this session this morning, it's these 6 behaviors which we can all implement in a short period of time. These don't take a lot of technical knowledge or ability. This is simply about changing our behaviors and changing our practices when it comes to cyber controls. This is no longer a box ticking exercise, but something we practice on a day-to-day basis. And we can all recognize the importance of strong passwords and keeping our data and our files safe and secure. So just quickly running through some of these then. The first step there is to create a separate password for your email. Why? Well, your password is often a gateway. Your email is often a gateway into your other accounts. If you ever forget your password for an account, you often have a forgot username, forgot password sent to your inbox to then reset your password. So if a cyber criminal has access to your email, they can reset your other accounts and access information you've saved about yourself or your business, especially if you're working with something like Google, Outlook, which connects to multiple interfaces, multiple programs. So first and foremost, it's important that we have a separate password for your email, separate from anything else we've used in our other accounts. So what does a strong password look like then? The NCSC policy on password is that your password should be made up of 3 random words. So these are words which aren't the names of family or friends or locations, but are really random words chosen to make that secure password. Why? Well, if we look at the top 100,000 passwords, any password 3 random words doesn't appear in the top 100,000 or even a million compromised passwords. Cyber criminals will have access to the most used passwords, and this can be in the range of millions to 10 millions of passwords. And cyber criminals have the capability to test these passwords en masse. And if your password appears in one of those lists, cybercriminals have an excellent way of gaining access to your account. So it's important that when we create a password, we're using that policy of 3 random words. And best practice demonstrates that we should have a 3 random word password for each of our accounts, whether that's email, utilities, work. We should never be using the same password for every account. The question that brings up is then, well, how do I remember different passwords with 3 random words for every account? The cyberware campaign recognizes that this is an impossible task for UK citizens and citizens across the world. So we recommend that passwords are saved in your browser, whether this be Chrome, Safari, Edge, for 2 reasons. One, it stops users from using the same password from account to account. And the problem there is that if you recycle or reuse the same password across different accounts, if a cyber criminal or threat actor gains access to one of those passwords, they can then try that for your different accounts. And likelihood is that if you reuse that password, they will be able to get access to one of your other accounts. So by creating a different password and saving it in your browser, it means that you can have different passwords for each account, and that way you're not writing it down. Which is again another security risk. And again, there it protects against some cyber crimes to suspect websites. So your browser will recognize genuine websites that you've been to before, and if you try and log in, it'll auto-generate all the information, so you don't have to enter your password. But if it looks like you've been redirected to a fraudulent email, something which is made to look genuine, like HMRC, gov.uk, the browser will recognize that this isn't a genuine site and won't auto-populate those credentials. If, however, a cybercriminal is able to gain access to your password and your accounts, it's important that on your most important accounts and where possible, you implement 2-factor authentication. So in the scenario that a cybercriminal gains that information, they still won't be able to gain access to that account, because they will then require that second level of authentication to log in. And often we see this used with the banks, where you require a second level of authentication to gain access to your account. So this can be something, it'll be a password, a phone, smart card, or fingerprint or eye scan, so your biometrics. And by implementing 2-factor authentication, it means that cyber criminals won't be able to gain access to your account without that second level of authentication. And often with 2FA, that email or that message will demonstrate that someone's tried to log in, and if it isn't you, you can identify that someone's trying to access your account fraudulently. But of course, we're all human, things do go wrong. Cyber criminals will always leverage vulnerabilities within software, within operating systems, which is why it's important that we update our devices and our software on a regular basis. Out-of-date software contains weaknesses in them, and suppliers and vendors are constantly updating their software to remove these vulnerabilities as they're found. So as I said there, companies fix the weaknesses through updates, through patches. So we need to take the time to implement those updates and those security patches. We've all seen it before. We've been in the middle of something, the community wants to restart, install an update, and it's very easy to click do it later, maybe some other time. But it's important that we get into a habit of updating our devices as soon as that patch comes in. And finally, we need to back up our data on a regular basis. Things do go wrong. Cyber criminals do gain access to our networks and to our systems, which is why in the event of ransomware or our files and database being deleted, we have a second copy. We have a backup copy we can access during these scenarios. So this means, this is about keeping a copy of your information saved either to an offline device, such as a hard drive or a USB stick, or creating a copy in the cloud. So by backing up regularly, it means that you will always have a recent version of your information saved. There's nothing worse than losing access to your files, your systems, only to find out that the last backup was a month ago, 2 months ago, and that information is out of date. Businesses need to be in the habit of creating regular backups and regular intervals. And in fact, this is something we should all be doing in case anything ever goes wrong. As it says there, by having regular backups, it will help you recover quicker if your data is lost or stolen. So this is something we can do very quickly ourselves and implement very quickly. And in fact, many devices now across Android and Apple will update those photos, those files, on a regular basis. So those are the steps to the cyberware campaign. There's a lot to unpack there. There's a lot to implement and go through, which is why we've created the self-assessment tool. This is a cyber action plan whereby if you answer a few questions and go through the survey, it'll create a bespoke action plan for you to implement. This is for both organizations and for individuals. So it's something I'll be doing over the weekend. This is something we introduced not too long ago. And just by answering those questions, it'll create a tick list action plan of all the things you need to do to implement those cyber aware tools and actions. And by implementing the cyber aware campaign, we drastically improve our cybersecurity controls and behaviors, because cyber criminals will start to go elsewhere. Cyber criminals are bound by time and resource. They really want those easy wins. They're really going after those victims who don't have this level of cybersecurity controls in place. And as I said, these steps are very easy to implement, won't take a lot of time, but will lessen the likelihood of you being the victim of a cyber attack, either at home or at work. That was a lot of information to unpack in a short space of time. As Ross and I mentioned at the beginning, these sessions will be running at the same time for the next 4 weeks. I'm happy to take any questions people may have at this time. And if people want any extra resources, I'm happy to supply those. I know we're close to the wire, but I'm happy to take any questions in the next 2 to 3 minutes. So thank you all, and thank you, Ross.
Christopher, that's absolutely brilliant. One question that's come in from Mark, if I can just pose it, if you are hearing me, hopefully. Do you recommend password managers? And Mark apparently uses his browser, but he's aware that you can get special applications to do the job. And there was a bit of a sidebar conversation about that, but I wonder what your thoughts are.
Yeah, definitely. And I know Tim has posted our guidance on password managers. So your browser does act as a password manager, and it will do a great job in saving those passwords. Whether at an organizational level or whether you need something a bit more bespoke, there are fantastic password managers out there on the market, and our guidance that Tim has mentioned there kind of sets out some what to look out for a good password manager. But it's an excellent point, excellent question from Mark.
Okay, Christopher, thanks ever so much. And as you say, we are slightly pushed for time. Certainly, thanks very much for everybody who attended this morning. Same time, same place next week. And we're going to look at keeping your business safe online. And for those of you who haven't already done so, you can join the Southwest Cyber Resilience Centre as a free core member. And if you look at us up online or access us through LinkedIn. Christopher, once again, thanks very much for the input this morning. It's absolutely fascinating, and look forward to next week.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. Have a good weekend.
Cheers. Bye-bye.